To what extent do you think that the CBN should, I use the word advisedly, report to the legislative arm of government?
Thank you very much. The point made by the Honorable Senator about transparency and accountability has to be taken very, very seriously. The straightforward reporting that you say is applicable currently of the CBN reporting directly to Mr. President, so to speak, may present some challenges. You find that in any democratic structure, you would have to have checks and balances. The need to also have an assessment or a direct reporting structure with the National Assembly is certainly not out of place, so that there can be a balance to ensure that there is no connivance between the executive and the central bank. Just like you said, you know, the executive could be powerful enough to still say, go open the safes and take out money and things like that. The National Assembly, if they had a say in this matter, this wouldn't happen. You see, there are too many things that one can point to as distractions to our monetary framework. But most certainly, we are worried that the amount of debt accumulation, for example, by both the central bank and its agent, the debt creation, I beg your pardon, the debt management office, is mind-boggling. I find it very strange that an agency that is able to dish out the country's money willfully at its own whims and caprices should not be under control. We have had bailouts to the banks authorized directly by the central bank. We have had over 2 trillion naira pushed through to AMCOM in some way or the other.
But
in order to be able...
Sorry to interject.
Yeah.
Those actions were taken with the consent of Mr. President, who has delegated the authority to the CBN governor.
Thank you very much. This is exactly what I'm saying. This has happened, and there's been what? Challenges within the system, so to speak, if I can use that word politely. Okay? So what I'm suggesting, of course, is that if you had a situation where so much money is in the hands of one agency of government and is able to dish it out as it likes, a state cannot exist within a state. The purpose of the National Assembly is to provide these checks to make sure that there are no excesses of this nature. I'm sure if the National Assembly had been made aware of 600 billion being given to the banks, 2 trillion to AMCOM, and yet, for what purposes? In order to be able to improve our economy. But instead, our economy has not improved. There is nothing to suggest that more employment is being created. There's nothing to suggest that more jobs are being created. There's nothing to suggest that there's more wealth creation in any form. But this agency of government has willfully, on its own, been able to spend this amount of money without recourse, without control, without accounting to anybody. There is no transparency in that kind of thing. I understand the fears of Nigerians that, oh, maybe the National Assembly wants to get back at the... But I think that's a little bit petty. The reality is, as the Honorable Senator has said, the issues of transparency and accountability. Otherwise, for example, you wouldn't have the freedom with which, for example, the central bank is able to lend out money to banks at 12% and borrow from the same banks at 15%. If there was transparency and accountability, somebody would raise their fingers and say, look, does this make sense for you to lend to the banks at 12% and then go back and borrow from them at 15%? These are the things, the fears that the senators have, and it is necessary that we take them seriously.
Exactly the point you raised now, I will raise that with Senator Adetunbi before I come back to Mr. Anwani. Senator, on this kind of issue that was just raised by Mr. Henry Boyo, do you think that we need the National Assembly as the authority over the central bank in terms of checks and balances. Do we need to have that, or should we make the existing system where the presidency is the one that authorizes it, should we make it more buoyant, a bit stronger and more effective, rather than having the National Assembly call them to order?
Well, I will not like us to pigeonhole this argument into who controls CBN, executive or legislature. I think that's really not the language. The issue on this table is not about controlling. It's not about who has authority over what. It's about how the processes of state works in a collaborative manner to the best interest of the entire country. I think what we have on our hands here is more of, not so much of inadequacy of laws, but of styles and approaches and attitude to, public issues that have multi-stakeholder concerns. And that's why I tend to agree with Tope Adesua that the issue at stake is about the need for more consultation, more dialogue, more sharing, believing that we are working towards the same goal, rather than arms of government or institutions trying to create fiefdoms and territories that become totally exclusive. I want to admit that we have a long history of military dictatorship that has affected the psyche of Nigerians and how public institutions should behave. What is wrong in an institution like the central bank consulting public, making sure that its position is well understood, and persuasion? I want to cite the example of the recent 5,000 naira bill. The question is, traditionally there are several countries in the world with bigger, higher denominations than Nigeria. 5,000 naira is $30. There are countries with $1,000 bill like Switzerland. The Swiss franc is about over $1,000. That's not the issue. The issue is, does government run by executive fiat, or does it run by consultation, public education, enlightenment, and getting people to queue behind a policy that may be good for the country but not necessarily popular? I think these are the issues we should be talking about.
Okay, all right. Let's come back to the studio and ask Mr. Nwani. Now, you are in the business sector, London Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Lagos Chamber of Commerce.
Lagos, oh gosh. I just came back from London. I think it's still in my...
Overhang.
Overhang. Yes, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. When you look at it from the business perspective and you see all of the arguments, where would you say an organization like Chamber of Commerce and Industry, where do they stand in terms of who should be regulating, who should have oversight function over the CBN? What level of consultation should they have to do in terms of, let's take the example just given by the senator now, the 5,000. What level of consultation should they have to do before the decision is taken?